Alright, hello and welcome back to my 2D Left 4 Dead in Unity tutorial. Today we are implementing boomers, so if you don't know from Left 4 Dead, boomers basically puke on you and that causes a horde to be drawn to you and yeah, then they run away. So let's just do this. So first off, the boomer will puke on us, as you can see by that little head animation there. He will then run off, he basically just runs to the end of a level and then then the horde comes. And then once the boomer can puke again, because in Left 4 Dead they have a 10-second cooldown or something in versus mode, so I've just added that. He will come back to us and then try and puke on us again. So let's go see how we did this. Okay, so basically the main bit of the boomer AI is just controlled by this boomer infected behavior, which is basically almost identical to the normal infected, but with a few changes to make them like the boomer. So first off, we got a float called puke timer, which is basically just the number that counts down, deciding when a boomer can or can't puke. We've got a puke reset, which is just the value that it gets reset to. So for this, we can puke. The boomer can puke every 10 seconds. We've got a bool to say whether we are currently puking. We've got a sprite array to well, basically, these are the frames of animation where the boomer's head's puking, and then we've got a sprite for when it's normal. We've got a float for puking here, which it's different to the puke timer in that this is how long the boomer will puke for, and puke timer is how long between pukes, basically. And we've finally got a sprite renderer for the head, so we can have somewhere to change the animations as we get interrupted by a fucking train. Okay, so let's go on to the next bit that's different. Mainly just here. So in the start method, we've taken out the actually adding to the infected monitor because we'll be implementing a different version with what was it in the director. So they'll have keep track of these special infected separate from the normal common horde infected. So yeah. So first off, an update, we just check for an obstacle first. Then if our target is null, we get the nearest target for the boomer. So in this case, it goes through all the players and we'll get the closest one. So basically, if you need be going over that, we've got game object to return, distance, then we go through each of the players in the world. If the distance that between the player and the boomer is less than the distance here, then we set the distance there to be equal to the distance between the player and the boomer, and set the return value to be G. And since we're looping through all the players, if we find an even closer one, then that one will get replaced, and then we just return the closest, and the boomer will make a beeline for that particular player. Simple. Yep. Another train. So, once we're on, once we've actually got a target, so if our puke timer is less than or equal to 0, or our puking boolean is true, we just do a quick check to make sure if our target is not equal to player, then we get a new target. This is basically to make sure that once we're transitioning from running from the players to targeting the players, we have the right target. So first off, we check if we have a line of sight to the object, which again is basically just a line of sight that takes into account every object but the infected. So infected can see through other infected essentially. So if we do have a line of sight to the player we're targeting, and if our distance is less than 1.5, we will rotate to face the player, we will set moving to true, and we will move to the position of the target. But if we are less than 1.5 meters away, we will set moving to false. We'll still rotate to face the player, and we'll call this puke function. Now let's just go to the puke function. Go to declaration. So we set this puking boolean to true to indicate that we are puking. We reduce the puking by time.delta just to count down for a second so we don't puke forever. Yeah. And then we just set the myhead.sprite to be a random frame of the puke head animation. Since there's only two, we're just switching between two. You could have as many in that array as you want, or if you wanted something more complex, you could just cycle through them. Choice is up to you. I'm not that good of an artist, so I just let it just do random frames. And then if our puking timer is less than or equal to 0, we basically check if there is a player within 1.5 meters of the boomer when it's puked. We call force horde, and we set puking to be equal to 1.0. We should probably break out of that loop actually. Break, because we don't want to force 4 hordes if a boomer's got all of the players. So, yeah, that breaks out of the loop. We then set the puke timer to puke reset. So, this basically makes sure that we can't puke again. We can't puke again instantly if the target is still near to the boomer. We set puking to 1, so that just resets the how long the puking takes timer. We set the sprite back to the normal head, and we set the puking boolean to false. So yeah, so that's what happens on puke. Now, if the boomer can puke, but it doesn't have a line of sight to the target, then basically what it does is it checks if we are within 1.5 meters of a target again, and calls puke if we can, and then still rotates the face of the target. But instead of moving in a straight line towards the target, we are calling. We're basically using the pathfinding that we used in the normal infected. So basically, we just check if we are more than 1.5 meters away from our current path counter, then we call get path to target, and then if blocked is equal to false, then we call move along path, and then if we have found an obstacle, then we just call deal with obstacle like we do with the normal infected. That's pretty much the same. Next up, so once we've puked, so the timer will be 10, or puking is false, then we call this section. Basically what this section does is it will check if our target.tag is equal to player. So if it is equal to a player, then we set the target to be the safe room.current safe room.safe room door.game object. Just for safe rooms, basically what I've done is create a singleton to indicate the safe room of the current level, and that's why current room is equal to this there. So we just set it there. Basically what I'll do is in every level, once you start it, it'll just assign the safe room to be the current room, and that'll basically allow boomers to run towards it and stuff. So yeah. And since we can't puke, we count down the puke timer while we're running away, and we check again if we're blocked. If we're not blocked, sorry, we call the animation controller and set the ball moving to true, so we can play the legs moving animation, and we call move along path, which again just will just sort of move us along the path, really. I don't know why that took so long to explain. And then again, if we are blocked, it just sets moving to false in the animation controller, and says we want to deal with the obstacle, which is identical to the method. Well, it's identical to the one in the normal infected method, so you can just go check that episode out to get the code from that. And again, the last teleport I went through is equal to null, otherwise we count down the last teleport timer. And that's all the same as in the normal infected script, so you can go check that out. And finally, one last change was to the teleports. So basically we're checking boomer if we can't get an infected behavior off the object that's just gone through the teleporter, we basically call the boomer infected. We check for boomer infected behavior to see if it was actually a boomer infected rather than just a normal infected. And if it is, we set if boomer can go through that teleporter, we call the boomer set node closest to this. And we also do the same in the on trigger stay. So we check if there's a boomer infected script on the object that just went through the teleporter. If there is, if the boomer can go through that teleporter, and if the last time I teleported is more than 0, we return. But otherwise, we call last time I teleported to 0.1, so we stop stuff instantly getting flinged back and forth between the same 2 teleports. And then we get the position of where we're going to be when we get to the new teleport, or the end location of a teleport. And then we set the node closest that. And yeah, that is pretty much it. So yeah, that was Boomers in a very haphazard and quick time way. But yeah, cheers for watching and goodbye.